welcome to my channel. Welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be a palette ranking. A lot of these palettes I did first impressions on, so any of those videos when I'm talking about the palettes, I will link up top in the iCards. Some of them I did try off of camera, but I still wanted to come back now that I've tried these palettes multiple times and just give my thoughts and rank them. So if that sounds good to you, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't yet. I have 9 products to talk about, so let's just get started. All right, so before we talk about the number 9 palette, if you're curious about anything that I'm wearing on my face today, all of my makeup is always listed in the description box below. But let's start with the number 9 palette. And this is gonna be the Oden's Eye Alva 2 palette. I got this in a mystery box from Oden's Eye. I'll link that video. And I'm trying to find like the most polite way to say it. I actually did not play with this palette. I only swatched it. And I only swatched this shade here because as I was, I keep all of my palettes and all the products that I've done first impressions on, I keep them off to the side to incorporate when I'm doing my makeup so I can test them further. And this I just never wanted to reach for. And the more I looked at it, it was like, okay, yes, this isn't that old in my collection, but I just don't want it in my collection. So rather than using it and knowing that I'm never going to reach for this palette again, other than to just test it out, I'm just going to declutter it. I can find someone who would give this a much better home. I'm not really into blue eyeshadows. These browns here, I'm a brown lover, I'm a neutral lover, but I also prefer more of a neutral leaning cool tone brown. And this one's just too warm tone. The shimmers are pretty. I would use these shimmers, but to only use the shimmers out of 5 shades, 6 shades if you're counting this as 2, I just don't think it's worth it enough to keep in my collection. I don't think this is bad. I'm sure people that like this color story would like this. Just for me, it's not something I'm gonna get use out of, and there's no point in keeping it in my collection if I'm not going to. So that brings us now to the number 8 palette. And this palette, unfortunately, I am also going to declutter. I just want to have a rule. If I know I'm not going to use it, I don't want to keep it. And that's regardless of whether I've had it in my collection for a month or if I've had it in my collection for a year. I don't want to be hanging on to things that are just going to weigh me down and not be able to allow me to see the products that I love and that I want to use. So unfortunately, the number 8 spot goes to the Colourpop Lavish palette. I will also link this video up above. Now, I feel bad because I've just been shitting on Colourpop so much. I have like some core palettes from them that I love, and I love them as a brand, but for some reason, I am just not picking palettes that suit me. And I think that my problem is I continue picking up like these monochromatic palettes. The last one that I tried before this was the Pretty Please palette. I also decluttered that because it just wasn't saturated enough for this. And I shouldn't have bought this. I should have thought harder about my purchases. Again, not a bad palette. Like this shade is really pretty. I have nothing bad to like say about the quality actually. The Pretty Please palette, I did not like the quality. This is just not something I can see myself reaching for. I don't wear color that often. And if I do, it's not really this kind of color, even though I love purple. Now, this was supposed to be a lavender palette, and I talked about this in my video about this, but this leans a little bit more periwinkle to me, a little bit too blue. And I realized that if you actually look at lavender, it does have blue in it, but this is just a little bit too much blue. I was kind of hoping that the colors inside would kind of match the cover more. And you can see just like compared even to here or the background, it's much more blue gray leaning. So for that reason, it's just not my favorite. Again, there are Colourpop palettes I love. I love the Making Mauves palette. I love the Star Wars palette with the little Yoda on it, the Child palette. Love both of those. And I use them often, but this one I just know I'm not going to reach for, and I need to be much more picky. I was already picky with my Colourpop purchases, but I need to be even more picky because what they're coming out with just hasn't really been my style recently. And that brings us to number 7. I did want to do this separate, even though it's part of the same collection. Let me just talk about it. It's the Colourpop Super Shocks that came with the Lavender Haze collection. And I put this at number 9, 8, 7, yes, 7 spot, because these I am going to keep. So I didn't want to put it with the palette. I should have just bought these because this gives you the lavender sparkle without having a whole palette of mattes. I can find other mattes to use for these Super Shocks if I really want like a purple vibe going on, but most likely I'm going to use this as like a one and done, maybe throw a bronzer in the crease or just some neutrals and really make these shine. So I wish I had just purchased these during the collection. They're all very pretty, still a little bit more periwinkle blue leaning than the kind of purple I want, like this kind of purple, but that's okay. I still like these. I specifically like the more light shade, which is Angelic. This dark one, I don't know how much use I'm gonna get out of it if I'm being honest, because it's not really like a one and done shadow, but maybe I could use it as a base with Angelic on top. So I'll see how that works. I have used these a few times as like maybe just like a spotlight, but I am happy that I picked these up. They're just not top of my list. Now going into number 6, these are also singles. I feel like we've only been talking about 2 brands, but I didn't want to group this together. Again, I'm talking about Odin's Eye now because these I will keep, whereas the other palette I'm going to declutter. This I also got in my Odin's Eye mystery bag, and they're 3 of the jewel collection. So I got like a very pretty blue, I got a green, and I got a iridescent white shade. So this is Ella, Gabriel, and this one is David. Now, when I got my mystery box, it was very odd because I only got one of these like clear acrylic things for the single shadow. These 2, or 2 of them, only came with the cardboard packaging to hold the single shadow and didn't really have a component. But when I purchased the Stone and Rock palette and the 2 new palettes from Odin's Eye, I picked up 2 more of the components just so they would have a little home because I didn't really want to put them in a Z palette. I wouldn't use them as much that way. So I did end up getting the other components. I just wanted to mention that. These are nice. They're pretty, but I don't love them. Had they not come in the mystery box, I would not have purchased them, if I'm being quite honest, specifically like the blue and the green. They're just a little dark. I know I'm not going to get a ton of use out of them in my collection, but I'm not ready to declutter them just yet. I think I can get a little bit of use, maybe push myself outside of the box with them. They're just a little dark and a little punchy for me. However, the formula is nice. When I've used them, I liked them. I've used the white shade the most because I've been really into the white iridescent shades. It's kind of like my step into the multi-chromes because it's a little bit more subtle. So this kind of has like a yellow to orange flip to it. Mostly yellow like gold. I don't know if you can kind of see that on there. It looks really pretty all over the eye as a topper, whatever you want to do. I love the look of this. I'll be getting the most use out of this one, but that is going to be the number 6 spot. Let's now talk about the number 5 palette. This is where things start to get much more positive. I'm in a much better mood talking about the next 5 palettes. These are all top tier palettes for me. Love them. I really didn't have too many in-betweens. I really just had like duds, okay, and now we're in the top tier. So the number 5 palette is going to go to this, and this is actually the Sydney Grace Mel Thompson bundle for her version of the Retro Glam. And that's what all of these are here. And I actually use this in a video testing out the multi-chrome, which is, I think, in the shade Ripple Effect, yes. And testing out the face palette, which will be in a different video. I'm just talking about palettes today. But I wanted to include the retro palette or Mel Thompson's version. Sydney Grace has excellent formula. You can't go wrong with this. It's only ranked number 5 because, spoiler alert, the rest of these are a little bit more neutral. So it really came down to color story for me. Even though This is a color story. It's color, in my opinion, without being too much. So if I was to do a colorful look, this is what I would reach for. It's a little bit softer color. They're not big, bright, bold colors like, you know, this blue here. It's a lot more muted and soft. Multi-chrome, fantastic. Love it. It is so beautiful. I really want to put it in a Z palette that I have of just multi-chromes. So now that I've talked about it today, I will be moving it. But it kind of has like a blue to purple with a slight green gold shift. It is beautiful. I'm glad that I picked it up. I will maybe eventually pick up some more multi-chromes from Sydney Grace. It's not top of my list, but if they were doing a sale or something, I could see myself picking up a few more of them. But that's going to be the number 5 spot. Really happy with this. When the Natasha Denona Retro Glam came out, I ultimately decided to purchase this instead of that. And I'm glad that I made that choice. I'm happy with that choice. I think Sydney Grace has such a good formula. Her mattes are great. I talked about them recently in my single shadow tag, which I'll also link. And yeah, love everything about this. Love the greens, the browns, the peaches, all of it. Highly recommend this one. Now going into number 4, this is the only palette I think that I did not try on camera first impression. I just pulled it in because I had it unopened in my bin and I've been trying to get through just my unopened makeup a little bit more. So this is the Kiko Milano and this is the Sweet Affairs Guilty Pleasure Eyeshadow Palette. Now I'm gonna show you this palette and you're gonna be like, why would you rank this number 4? And let me tell you why, because even though this is the most inconspicuous, boring palette, these shimmers, so it has, like, this is a satin, these 3 are kind of shimmers, this is a shimmer, and then you have 3 mattes here. This is just the perfect little neutral palette. These shades look dark in the pan, but they're not as dark as they look. I use this darkest shade as liner, but the real specialness in this palette are these shimmers. This shade right here, this one, is beautiful as just a one and done shade. It's like that perfect neutral chocolatey kind of brown. I love it. You can build it up like you can see on the tip of my finger, or you can just sheer it out for just more everyday look. I don't know what it is about this single shadow, but I could not stop using it. Even, I'm trying to find a clean finger here. Even this one here kind of just has like a more translucent base to it. I really like this palette. Clearly, I'm putting it as number 4 and I reach for it all the time. Just if I need something a little bit extra, if I'm feeling like my look is a little too boring, but I want a neutral, light daytime look, I go for this palette. I like it a lot. It's my first time trying Kiko Milano shadows, and it kind of has me intrigued. I think this was a holiday palette, if I'm not mistaken. They came out with like this whole chocolate themed kind of collection, and I'm really happy I picked this up on a whim, having never tried their shades, because it's really, really nice. And now it kind of has me interested in trying more Kiko Milano products. Moving on to the number 3 spot, I may be cheating a little bit here, but I actually have 3 palettes. These are all from the same brand. So they're from Peri Para, and they're like these long ones that I got off of Yes Style. They all have different names. So I have the Beautiful Rose, Whispers of Milky Spring, and Fall in Acorn. So let me open these up. Here is Fall in Acorn. It's just a very pretty neutral, very neutral brown kind of palette. Beautiful Rose is exactly that. It's a little bit more rosy, but still very neutral. And then Whispers of Milky Spring is gonna be more peachy. Now, I tried these all for the first time in my Yes Style haul, which I will link. And these all performed really nice. I think I used the milky one, this one here. And then the other 2 I tried off of camera, and I've used them all multiple times now. They are exactly what I imagined K-Beauty to be like, just a very soft wash of color. And I love that they're just so small and tiny. These shimmer shades here, trying to show you without doing what I just did. and getting shadow everywhere. Let's try like this. These shimmer shades here are so sparkly. You wouldn't think that looking at this because all of these mattes are very, very muted. They're very desaturated, but the shimmer shades have some sparkle to them, like some chunky, textured shimmer. I really like them. I probably, if I had to rank them, prefer the Beautiful Rose the most, followed by the Acorn, and then followed by the Milky. Peach isn't like my favorite color story. I just prefer like a more muted brown or these rosy tones. So that's how I'd rank them in there, but I felt like they went together enough to put them all in the number 3 spot. Nothing bad to say about these. They're a little bit on the pricey side, or what I would consider the more pricier side for K-Beauty. I was expecting them to be a little bit less, but YesStyle's always doing sales, so just keep an eye out for when these go on sale, 20% off, 30% off, etc. I do also have an affiliate code for YesStyle, so I'll link that down below if you want to save some money that way and use my code. But nothing bad to say about these. They're just the perfect everyday shadow. If you're not someone who likes color, if you want something quick and easy, you really can't go wrong with these, and they just fit so perfectly in a makeup bag. They take up little to no space. Really happy that I picked these up because they're just fantastic. Now let's talk about the number 2 spot and the number 1. Number 2, this is probably a little shocking because this is not a palette. I've already talked about some singles. I'm considering singles as palettes. This was the last other eye thing I picked up in my YesStyle haul. This is the Clavu Single Shadow in Glam Brown. Love this. I gave it number 2. I mean, I've used this multiple times since that video. I can't get enough. It's the just perfect shimmery taupey brown. I love it. If you gave me just a taupe brown shimmer, I could use it every day and be happy. Has a slight hint of gunmetal to it. And what I like the most about this is just the versatility on how much, like on my hand here, it really looks like a translucent base of just sparkling wetness. I am mesmerized. I'm just looking in the viewfinder and it looks amazing on my hand. Or you can build it up and get a much more smoky color. So here it is just built up. I kind of prefer it like this because I just think it's like so mesmerizing that way versus this. This comes out like just a little bit too smoky for me if I'm doing it all over the lid. I haven't been able to stop reaching for it, which is why I put it at number 2. This would just be one of the top things I would recommend getting out of this video if I had to recommend something. I want to say it was like $6. I'll have it linked down below from YesStyle. Of course, I saw this in Lauren May's beauty video doing YesStyle, so that's why I ended up picking it up. I knew that she wouldn't steer me wrong in the single shadow department, and she definitely did not. This is stunning. And we are now down to the number 1 spot. This I've probably had the longest. I think I tried this palette in a getting ready with me video. It's been so long that I can't even remember which video I tried it out for the first time. I will have it linked. So this goes to number 1 because I think it's just a staple palette that everyone should have. The first look that I did with it, I was blown away. I loved it. I did an all matte look, which I almost never do. And I felt just beautiful that day. And that's how I want my makeup to feel. So number 1 is going to go to the Artist Couture Supreme Nudes. This is an old palette. This is not a new palette. This has been out for years. And I've heard that the other palettes in this Supreme line haven't been as good, which is a shame, but I bought this because everyone talked about it. This is a palette that everyone loved, and it deserves all the hype. It deserves to come back and go viral because it is the perfect, just staple palette. You have the perfect amount of warm tones and cool tones. You have even something special here like this mossy green. I love these shades so much. It's so different from like the Odin's Eye. It just has like a little bit more grunginess, not as much sparkle, but I do prefer that. and you just have like your perfect matte shades here to do everything. You have just great shimmers. This is a palette you can have and rely on over and over again. I would reach for this every time that I was using a single shadow. I'd reach for this palette so I had just a good backdrop base. I think the Persona Identity palette was kind of my #1 neutral palette that I had, and I think this might have replaced it because it just has that little something extra special in it that I can't really describe, but it has everything that I want in a palette. It has this bronze sparkly shade. I don't normally go for bronze sparkly shades and warm tones, but there's something about this one that really just looks so flattering on the eyes. I feel like this goes with every skin tone, whether you like cool tones, warm tones, neutral tones, whichever tone you prefer, this has it in there. This palette just makes me want to use every single shade. I've talked about this. I prefer just a cool neutral tone, said that a million times, but this palette makes me want to use the warm tones in here because it's not just a straight up orangey bronze. It still is like toned down a little in that perfect way. I don't know what else to say about this other than like if you can find it on sale, since it's not a new palette anymore, pick this up. Don't sleep on it. Especially if you're someone who likes to have a very curated eyeshadow collection. I think this would be a very smart choice. I even, the Biba palette from Natasha Denona is a palette a lot of people rely on as a staple palette. I think I prefer this one more. It has that je ne sais quoi in it that I can't explain. It's perfect. That's why I put it at #1. I don't remember what year this came out, but if I could put this in like a best of beauty, I probably would for the year. I like it that much. One of the best palettes that I've tried so far this year. That's a non-indie brand. I'm very happy with this purchase and happy that I finally tried it out. I can't say enough good things about it clearly, so I'm just gonna stop talking and you'll just have to take my word for it. Let me know down below in the comments if you have this palette and pull it back out because it's probably been forgotten in your collection, and just let me know if it's still a favorite of yours or if you hate it. That's all the palettes that I have for you, all 9. Let me know your thoughts on any of these other palettes. I would also love to know if you've tried Kiko and what your thoughts are on them, or even just Colourpop as a whole, because like I said, I've kind of just been not talking great about them recently, and I really want to just find more products that I like. I think maybe I just need to stay away from eye stuff and stay more on complexion, bronzer, blush, the Super Shocks. I don't know, but I'm ready to like fall back in love with Colourpop. It seems like they're reformulating a lot of things, so maybe that'll help. Their lip products especially, because they were not great before. I'm getting on a tangent now here. That's all I have to talk about. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. That's where I'm going to leave you all today though. I hope you have a great one, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye everyone.